Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about AI and machine learning. Tom, I'm going to throw it over to you. Specific use case you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, one of the great things about AI and ML are being able to automate routine tasks. So I think all of us, our blood pressure goes up when we walk into DMVs or have to renew our licensing. We're seeing a lot of activity at state DMVs that tie into transportation to automate some of the routine tasks. So it makes it a lot easier and simplifies the process of renewing your license, which ties directly into a lot of it came out of a lot of the things that are happening at DHS around biometrics and things like that. So it just simplifies getting your license.
Fantastic. And there's nothing routine at DHS. We know that, Dave, but give us a specific example. You touched on a couple of them there. You want to highlight one of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, there are 3 airports around the country that are looking at using facial recognition technology to create a touchless experience. And hopefully by the end of this year, that'll go from 3 airports to 8 airports.
Nice.
TSA calls this the credential authentication technology, and it can take a traditional experience of having to hand over your passport to using facial recognition, using mobile driver's license to authenticate, to connect to your travel reservation, verify an individual, and allow you to move on to the next step of your journey.
Fantastic. All touchless, I would imagine, which is outstanding. Really do appreciate that. We look forward to that as the traveling public. Jeffrey, how about at H2O.ai? Can you give us a specific example you'd like to bring to our attention?
Well, I'll give you a general term that everybody seems to have their very specific area, and it's around burden reduction. And we're dealing with lots of offices of burden reduction, and a lot of it is around paper. And specifically, we've got organizations that are getting millions of faxed documents coming in for patient referrals that are very detailed, that need to have clinicians review that data because they've got oncologists that have specialties that need to see and understand that data. There's a huge amount of PII and PHI in there. And it's a difficult problem to solve. And so we've completely automated that process where historically those medical organizations were told it was impossible to do this because documents were handwritten, some were typed, none of the forms were the same. They're all different. Sometimes they're sideways, sometimes they're upside down. And so we've been able to solve that by combining a variety of OCR, ICR, natural language processing, language models, document analysis. And I think the key here is that we can do that by training relatively small sets of data, and then the system automatically learns. So now you can suck in millions of data. We've got one customer that pulls in over 1 million pages of documents a day that we are analyzing, classifying, working with an RPA solution to help with downstream routing. But specifically on the front end of that, we saved one group 25,000 man hours just ingesting the faxes, and then another 5,000 man hours of clinician time where the human in the loop review process was accelerated. So that's where we feel like we can really make a difference.
Fantastic. And it doesn't go unnoticed that we're talking about AI and fax in the same sentence there, which is impressive, I might say. Sanjay, would you like to highlight a specific example for us?
Sure. Thanks, Luke. So we've got a number, and much of it's focused on how we empower our mission staff to do high value work and more with less. A recent one that comes to mind, though, is one where we combined our machine learning models to help our beneficiary claims examiners accelerate the process for how they make determinations on claims. And so to kind of set the scene, program office came to us and expressed an important mission need that their team currently processes around 3,000 forms a month with an estimated processing time of around 15 minutes to assess fraud, match data from past determination forms, validate it, and then make a determination. And the numbers seem to be increasing. And so we took that concern through our innovation incubator, where we assess the current state, really heard the customer needs, what their current experience was like. And then we, through a series of that, we determined that we could use an AI-driven form recognition technology in our cloud space to automate the process, assess the forms, and determine which were complete, which required human intervention, and really help to speed the staff along to focus more on getting those through the process and customer service, empathy, the things that they really want to do, and not be data wranglers and data collectors and all those pieces. A really important piece with that is just, as I mentioned before, the KPIs and how we assess value. So as we went through the pilot and the process, we saw that 50% of the workload could be covered by the form recognition technology, and the other 50% it was being handled by the claims examiners. We were able to increase accuracy, faster processing times, and then the ability to do more forms, better customer service, and all the stuff we create as visuals, and not only kind of share that with them, but then also bring it back to our leadership around a day in the life of a claims examiner and what that experience currently looks like, and where we're smartly looking at where do we take off that workload and empower them to come back and look at things in a much more focused way versus having to do it all.
Fantastic use case there, and very interesting. Got a lot of spread here on these various use cases. Powerful technology. We're going to wrap it up with this last question. I'm going to start with you, Tom, and we're going to talk about fast forward 2 to 3 years. This technology is rapidly being adapted, and it's adopted, and it's rapidly being developed. What does it look like 2 to 3 years from now? What's the demand signal coming from your customers?
I think the demand signal is high, and in the near term, it'll greatly enhance cybersecurity, risk and financial markets, keeping us safe, all areas that are great for the public. But the one area that I'm hearing a lot about and I'm most excited about is in healthcare. It's just going to give us amazing research capabilities to drive better healthcare outcomes and analysis. And I just think we'll see great advancements in science and things like genomics that will rapidly advance our ability to deliver positive outcomes in that space and continue to instill public trust in our public institutions.
We certainly look forward to that. Jeffrey, how about at H2O.AI? What's it look like 2 to 3 years from now?
Well, you asked about the demand signal, and I think the demand signal will continue to go up. And I think the real tipping point will be when the trust signal from users, I think, is consistently high, right? And that's that transparency. Is it repeatable? Can you audit it? And is there now a fundamental understanding across the business user community as to why this matters? And I think we're sort of where cyber was 10 or 12 years ago, where we had a lot of really, really smart people that were practitioners that were solving really hard problems. And so I think allowing organizations to scale this so they've got a good competency. That's what I'm hoping. It's a long haul, and there's going to be a lot of challenges. And so I guess to on the back of what Tom was saying, in healthcare, we still have humans all over government reviewing peer papers and submissions from doctors and research reports. And, what's going on around the pandemic, I think the ability to just rapidly understand, synthesize, summarize that data and get it into researchers' hands, so that our big brain people aren't doing clerical work, I think will be a big, big leap forward for us. And I'm looking forward to that. Right.
We don't want the data scientists wrestling with the data. We want them to be using the data. And we really do appreciate that. Mark, how about at Data IQ? What's it going to look like 2 to 3 years from now as you move your capabilities out of the petri dish into the mainstream?
Yeah, so we've got a vision at Data IQ that we call everyday AI.
Okay.
And the future we see includes a significant rise in data literacy across all industries, where data science and AI impacts every industry, every job, every process, every product and service. Similar to the advent of the internet, it really gets going when each person is engaged and can experience how AI impacts their life in a positive way. And that's the future we see.
Really do appreciate that. We're looking forward to it. Dave, you gave a couple of fantastic use cases, from the adjudicator over at CIS to a much more pleasant experience for the traveling public in the airports. What do we expect to see 2 to 3 years from now?
So you're going to see, hopefully, and this is what we're working towards up in management, we're looking at commitments from each component on improving engagements with the public through AI, right? So this is where you start talking about what we had spent a while with customer experience on burden reduction. We're going to be starting to see the same thing around commitments on things like, touchless travel, right? On things like using opt-in and opt-out in specific places to allow for AI and that type of decision making to occur. You're going to see transparency. I don't think the public will allow us to be successful without us being fully transparent on not just the actual experience being held, but just in general where the technology is being used, what data is being used to support it, as well as what processes and checks do we have to make sure it's safe and effective. And I think last but not least, you're going to see adoption through sharing. So as each component may have a completely disparate mission, and some are more related to emergency management, some are more related to the legal immigration process, some through the illegal immigration process, you're going to start seeing where those AI ML use cases and the science and technology research being done is going to start getting noticed. And those other groups say, well, we have actually a very similar use case. So if you swap out a checkpoint with this entry area here, we can essentially leverage that same technology. We can leverage those same patterns, that same process, the same governance, the same oversight to be able to have a better experience for the general public.
Well, we really do appreciate the doubling down on the public interest and the user experience, if you will, knowing that DHS, I think, has the largest interaction with the public in various ways. So certainly do appreciate that. Sanjay, you talked about a very interesting use case in that last segment. What can we expect 2 to 3 years from now, perhaps in that same environment or other environments in the Department of Labor?
Absolutely. I think where there's going to be much more exploration and focus on it, but I want to plus up on what David had mentioned, that the growing use of AI is going to lead to a need for more transparency in how AI models are trained and used and how they're being leveraged for decision making. I see that being a really important focus in government, especially as you look at some of our diversity, equity, and inclusive goals to how we want to create a fair and open space for everyone. I think the largest source of bias in AI systems is the data where they're trained on, and that the data may have historical patterns, and once we have that lineage and that quality, there's a lot of questions around where that's coming from and how verified are those decisions. And I think ultimately the machine learning gain knowledge from data, but that data is coming from us. It's coming from our systems. And so I think there's going to be a growing attention to having documented transparency around the data, around how we got to results, how we're validating different tools that are getting out there, and to demonstrate that we're doing it in a fair and balanced way. And so I think that's going to be a core focus. I think another one is going to be just continued momentum to invest in this space. I talk a lot about worker empowerment and the fact that agencies are doing more with less. We continue to get more accountabilities, more responsibilities, and the inputs at some point it's hard to match the outputs when that's also not growing. So, and we're not looking at replacing workers, but we're looking to how do you augment them? How do you empower them? As I've talked more with our staff and our programs, there's a hunger for let's do it right. Let's do it in a balanced, transparent way. But where can we start to enable us to not, I wasn't hired to be grabbing several different sources of data and validating these components. I'm hired because I've got policy expertise, I've got knowledge expertise in these areas, help to empower me to do my job faster, better, to focus more on what I was hired to do, not necessarily be spending all my days reporting and pulling data together just to get to the good stuff.
Sure, exactly. You want to scrape that out of the way so you can work on these up the value chain type of activities. Jerry, Is it the goal of the Patent and Trademark Office to automate this entire process? If I invent a new way to roast coffee or something, I can submit it, and 3 days later, a machine sends me back a patent. What's the goal?
Luke, I'm glad you asked that question because it's something that comes up time and time again from internal stakeholders as well as our external customers. This concept of, will we see a robot adjudicator or robot patent examiner? The answer, as far
Presumably
as
heavily using AI.
indeed,
Yes.
indeed, heavily using
Mhm.
AI, ML, maybe the new fancy generative AI stuff coming out seemingly every week. As far as I'm able to ascertain that the probability of that being feasible, right now is 0. And it's 0 precisely because, one, even the most powerful AI technologies out there are not able to apply higher order logic that is the bread and butter of patent adjudication. Patent adjudication is one of these weird hybrid fields of both law and science. It's actually one of the, I think it's unlike any other government adjudication process in the country. It's this integration of law, science, and of course, the current patent application that's being examined. And you have to integrate all these disparate concepts, sometimes going to Title 35 of the US Code, sections, 102 and 103, and then sometimes, digging up, references, a reference book or an encyclopedia or a white paper that's, only retrievable through, the recesses of the internet or the search databases. Integrating all this disparate information and figuring out what to do with it is something that you can't get just by pattern matching. You can probably get, a facially reasonable imitation of that process, but ultimately that process, as done by the current state of the art in AI, will not reach the level of sophistication, accountability, or transparency that our customers and the IPC ecosystem at large ultimately demands of the USPTO. So for those reasons, I don't think we're going to see, robot examiners take over the office. The vision for AI and ML at the USPTO is to augment and empower examiners and our human experts, not to replace. By putting these tools in the hands of the people who are best equipped to make those final adjudication decisions, and by giving them more access to more information, more relevant information, and more timely information, that's how we can best incorporate AI and ML into the business of government and into the business of the USPTO.
And they'll just make those adjudicators super efficient, which is going to be awesome. Thank you. Gardy, take us home here, Department of Energy. I can think of a million use cases in regards to the adoption of this capability, everything from the power grid, et cetera. What's it going to look like from where you sit 2 to 3 years from now across Department of Energy?
Absolutely. I think across the board, we're going to see, the future is really exciting, given what we've seen over the past 6 months in itself, right? I think just to kind of drop in a little bit of data here, I think OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, put out a survey, basically, or some data that says that about 80% of the U.S. workforce will see their job impacted by AI over the next 3 to 5 years. That's a huge number. So as a result of that, I think what we are likely to see is agencies really taking their data strategy more seriously, because it's data is just going to be sort of at the center of all the great things that will happen with AI. And the other sort of, I don't know if it's a prediction, but the other thing that I can see is that, every worker will have an AI comrade, a co-worker sort of maybe just specializing and helping them to get to do their job and just do it more efficiently. So what we'll see out of that is really improved decision making. We talk about the decision making in the patent insurance process. We talk about different aspect here. We'll see sort of more sort of enhanced efficiency in the way we do things at different levels in government. We'll see improved sort of engagement with our stakeholders, the citizen who consume information or services from government. And also we'll see a significant improvement in terms of resource allocation, because now we'll be able to sort of, on the fly, figuring out where resources are needed and how to allocate them, and whether they are a human resource or AI resource. So, I mean, the future is really, really going to be exciting, and we're looking at all kind of ways we can apply AI as far as advancing the mission and making sure that we can continue to be a leader in the world in terms of what we do over here at the Department of Energy.
And we really do appreciate that. And you pointed out 80% of the workers will be affected by the use of AI. And I would say affected in a good way by the use of AI. So on that note, we're going to wrap it up. We really do appreciate you taking the time, all of you taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for the program. I'd like to thank our sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, the listening audience that tune in every month. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.